You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half of the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Welcome to Convenience Matters. Well, on Convenience Matters, we often talk about convenience stores being the ultimate destination for road trips, for people on the go. Well, today we're going to talk to the ultimate road tripper who is always in seeking adventure and fun and finds them sometimes in convenience stores and sometimes in unexpected places. Welcome to Convenience Matters. I'm Carolyn with NACS.
And I'm Britt, also with NACS.
And today we're joined by Colton Smith. He's the host and producer of ABC's Rock the Park. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for being with us. So, Colton, you and I met through some mutual friends. We were talking about recycling and doing really cool sustainable initiatives at convenience stores, but I was so amazed and interested by all the cool things you do. And we mentioned at the beginning that you are the host and producer of Rock the Park on ABC. So before I go introduce you, I'd love if you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. So, I can start just with Rock the Park, because to be honest, that has been the majority of my adult life. And so I grew up in Minnesota, ended up going to school at the University of Montana, and I met back up in college with one of my best friends who I grew up with, Jack Stewart. And throughout college, we always had that adventure bug. Actually, that started well beyond college. We've known each other since we were in second grade. And in our free time, we would go to the national parks. And Jack came from a film background. He'd always bring a little camera with him. And we would just kind of film our shenanigans, nothing to, put up on YouTube or anything like that. I mean, the same thing as taking a picture, just a way to document our experiences. And we kept going to national parks. We kept going on these adventures, and we always had our little camera with us. And then after we got out of college, we both kind of went our separate ways. We're both getting into different career paths, and we got on the phone and said, hey, let's go on one last national park trip. And so we went to Zion. We did our same thing. We brought our tiny little camera with us, put together a little video, and that video ended up circulating internally, and friends and family saw it, and we had a couple people close to us who were in television and in the production realm, and took a look at this video and said, hey, you know what, there might be an idea here. Two younger guys, very full of energy and wonder, showing people the national parks in a different way, kind of taking what we know about the national parks and putting a youthful spin on it. And so right then and there, I guess you could say I found my dream job. And for the last 5 years, that's exactly what we've been doing. We've been going around the country, going to national parks, national park units, national forests, and really just showing people how accessible these places are and the experiences that you can have in these national parks and what they can do to your lives, really.
Colton, this is Britt. I'm just going to jump right in. The show is amazing, and as a fellow adventure seeker, adventure lover, national park lover, my eyes are wide when I'm watching you all, and I'm just kind of, shaking my boots, and I'm like, oh, dream job indeed, my friend. I love NACS, everybody. I do love my job at NACS. But I mean, if you can, I love how personable you guys make it. It's this is us doing this thing. We're not really sure if we're gonna, we're here to help each other. And, I'm sure you've had a couple of scary moments, which are also, I'm sure, rather satisfying. And I'm wondering if you could just take a minute to tell me about a couple of those, a couple of near misses, the scary and the satisfying kind of coming together.
Right.
Oh, yes. Give me a second while I narrow it down to one.
Sure.
Well, no, you touched on a great point, and I think in a lot of ways that's why we've found success with this idea, and it's that we are very real. I very much pride ourselves on being maybe the most authentic thing that you're going to see on television, which is interesting because at the end of the day, it's a Saturday morning educational family programming show. But we started out really without a clue. We have done just about everything in the outdoor realm we've done for the first time on camera. So our first big rock climb, our first intense whitewater, mountaineering, you name it. All the emotions that you see are real. I've said this before, some of the most terrifying moments of my life have actually been caught and documented on film.
Which is so cool.
Yeah,
I love it.
I know. And that's a perfect segue into one of these stories. And I will say this before I get into this, you are very right. The moment after the terror has subsided is that feeling of, oh my gosh, I can't believe what we just got on film.
Yeah.
But so we were, the biggest one that sticks out to me that I still get chills thinking about is we were in Carlsbad Caverns National Park
I've
in
been
New
there.
Mexico.
It's beautiful.
So amazing. I mean, some of the most spectacular, majestic caverns that you're going to see anywhere. And not to mention just the plethora of bats that are just constantly swooping around you. It's quite the experience. We decided to go from the large cavern into a much, much smaller cave, and we were going wild caving. And so we go into this cave and we make it through the tight squeezes, the squeezes where you're virtually pressed up against the rock. You can't really move your arms too much. Your back has got about an inch or two of room to spare before it's hitting the ceiling, and you're on your belly. And so that's what used to get me really claustrophobic. Actually, Nick's the used to, still does. But I was feeling pretty confident because normally I have a much harder time squeezing through some of these spaces, but I could see that I'd progressed. And so we make our way through the tight squeezes, and we're sitting in this bigger cavern, and we're with our ranger, Ellen, down there, and she is telling us this amazing story of some of the first cave pioneers, if you will, who actually explored the cave that we were in. And they ended up getting lost, actually. And this is back in the day when you didn't have the luxury of having a nice headlamp with a 14-hour battery. So going from this kind of intense story, all of a sudden we hear this noise that kind of sounded, if you can hear this, it kind of sounded like just a very, exactly. And that was my reaction too. Yes.
I hear fear. I hear fear is what I hear.
It was. And it was a lot of uncertainty. And, we're kind of looking around in the middle of, talking on camera. And I just kind of stop and I look at our ranger and go, can we stop and answer what that might be? And she sits there, she's looking around and she says very reassuringly, you know what? I'm not sure. No. And because I'm not sure, that means that we should probably get out. And so we start making our way back to our exit, and our exit is the same very tight crawl as our entrance.
So you are low crawling backwards with mere inches and centimeters around your body.
Yes, and it gets much, much worse. So we make our way to that exit, and this was a scene. This was one of those moments where time just kind of stands still, and you feel like you're right in the midst of a movie that you're part of. And I make my way up to our exit, and I look down, and there's our tiny little exit, and water is just rushing in.
Oh my God.
And so the cave was flooding on us, and a couple acts of God happened next. First and foremost, this was in that moment kind of me stepping back and saying, okay, this is quite literally my worst nightmare, and it's happening right in front of me. So now what? And so we sit there, we talk about it very, very quickly, and our ranger, this is such a crazy stat that I have to throw out there. We're in the middle of the high desert, mind you. So rain is not something that just always happens. And this cave in Carlsbad Caverns called Spider Cave, they estimate that it floods once a year. So that's our luck right there. Now, you might think that's bad luck, but the ranger that we were with, she happened to have been in this cave 2 years prior on the one day of the year that it flooded as well. And so because of that, she knew that the really tight crawl, as terrifying as it was going to be, she knew that was the low point in the cave, and that's where the water was pooling. So nevertheless, we had to ditch all of our camera equipment, tens of thousands of dollars of stuff. We had to find a high point in the cave, cross our fingers, say a prayer, hope that it's going to be okay. And we had to get on our backs and crawl. Now this time we had to crawl on our backs, and we had, if you can imagine, about a 8-foot passageway where you can't see where you're going, and the water is coming up to your mouth.
Oh my God. I'm going with you on this journey right now, and I'm shaking. I'm like closing my eyes, just following you. And wow, kudos to you for sticking with it and for
we don't know
quick.
If he got out.
I'm guessing
do you think he did?
The end of the story is pretty happy. Sorry, Colton, go ahead.
Yeah. No, we made it. Yes. I'm here talking to you today. We made it. But no, it was. And, it was one of those things where I've said this story to many people, and, even my closest friends say, oh, I could never do that. Yeah, I don't think I could do that again either. However, the choice was endure or stay for 48 hours in a pitch black cave with no sound whatsoever and wait for somebody to come down there and rescue you. And so we went full steam ahead, and it was a doozy. We had somebody on our crew. That was the first episode that they had ever come on and worked with us.
And the last.
Yeah, exactly. We asked him afterwards. We did a little standing interview with him to get his thoughts, and he just goes, "Well, I can tell you this. This stuff is real." Yeah, exactly. This is very real, and I'm out of here. No, he came back. I don't know why, but he came back.
Well, shout out to Ellen for being like the most amazing ranger ever, and just having the wherewithal to pause and think quickly.
And to anyone listening who's going on that tour with Ellen, it's probably better not to if this has happened to her twice.
Or she's the best person to take you.
I don't know.
She knows all the the nooks and crannies as they are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, greatest ranger ever. She kept her cool, but I think you're very right. There might be something to that.
So Colton, after you get out of there and you catch your breath, the first thing you want to do is go get a Slurpee or something at a convenience store or the general store on the way in or out of the park, right?
Oh, of course. Always.
So that's my transition into something you and I talked about once before, is that coming in and out, like convenience stores, general stores, the little store that exists in the middle of nowhere, which may go by one of those names, is sometimes one of the best places to get what you need to come in with or pack out with or bring or stop on your way out because all you want is just a cool refreshment or something. I'm sure somewhere along your travels you've bumped into some of these really cool stores. Like I said, the middle of nowhere. You can be in the middle of the Dakotas or wherever. Any of those come to mind when you think of like that store saved my life or made sure that I had the right things?
Certainly. I mean, there's a couple I've got a lot of funny stories because you're right. I mean, I think we've logged now between Jack and I think we've logged we're getting close to about 240,000 miles on our vehicles in the last 4 or 5 years.
That's a pretty significant stretch to the moon at this point, right?
Yeah.
It is. It's a lot of driving, and we absolutely love it. We've always loved it. It's kind of how we began this before. We were so blessed to get the opportunity to actually make a living doing this. We would just hop in the car and go. And so, I of course have got plenty of stories of looking at the gas tank and realizing that, okay, there's a gas station 70 miles away is the closest one, and it says we have about 75 miles of gas. But one time where a convenience store really saved us was actually up Alaska. And in Alaska, I know they say this for, I think, just about every place in the country. Maybe actually Los Angeles might be the only place where you can't really say this, but the common phrase of, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. Well, Alaska, that is very, very true. And so filming up there, Mother Nature, as it does in all of our episodes, but especially in Alaska, Mother Nature dictates just about everything. And so we had concluded our day after driving about 6 hours to get to our destination the night before. We concluded a big hike and looked at the clock and said, "My gosh, we're done at 6 today. This doesn't happen. We don't finish. We don't generally do the normal 8 to 6. It's normally about 5:30 to 9 is is our shooting time. And so we get done and we're all feeling relieved. All right, we're going to get some rest. And we get a call and they say, all right, here's the deal. If we're going to climb this mountain, you guys need to leave right now. And so we hop in the car, we drive right back down the road another 6 hours. And at this point, it's getting really late and we're very much in the middle of nowhere and there's nowhere to stay whatsoever. And so our office is scrambling to try to find us a place to just lie our heads down for the night. And they finally find one and they give us the address. And so we're en route there. We're driving for all through the night and we pull up to our lodging. And it is a tiny little convenience store. And we're sitting there going, what the heck? Do we have the right street? Do we flub the address or something? Something's a little off here. We go inside and we say, here's what we're looking for. And they go, oh yeah, we have a handful of rooms that are connected to the gas station out back. And so we ended up bunking up there for a few nights and staying at a gas station, which is something that I never thought I'd be able to say. So I've seen convenience stores in many different ways, if you can't tell.
All hours of the day and night too, 24/7.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, shout out to that convenience store up in Alaska.
Yeah, right.
Whoever you are, thank you.
and hey, at first, I'm not going to lie to you, I felt like it was a very weird thing, but kind of to your point, what's a better place to have connected to your lodging? A place where you can get all the snacks, all the food, all the gear that you want right there.
Well, Colton, that's convenience right there. That's the ultimate 24/7 in a convenience store. So one of the things I wanted to circle back to was how you and I first started talking together. And briefly, what we talked about was sustainability. We were talking about recycling and some really great resources out there. And you got involved with gas stations and getting gas stations into getting recycling bins at their gas pumps, which is something NACS was working on also. So we connected, and we're gonna try some things. But what led you to that point where you wanted to really get with gas stations and make them help them get to where sustainability is top of mind?
Certainly, it was a variety of factors. I mean, one that I'm sure is apparent by now is that I've been to a lot of them. I've been to a lot of convenience stores and gas stations, and being on the road so much, you don't have as many options as you would want. I very much try to live a very sustainable life, but when you're out in the middle of nowhere, sometimes that can be challenging. And so, like most people, if you were to take a moment, look into your car and see, what kind of material had, starts to build up, most of those materials are things that can be recycled. And so I can't even count the number of times. I mean, it's basically infinite. That's why we started our sustainability at gas station talk in general, is that I never would go to a gas station and see a place where I could recycle these easily recyclable items, plastic bottles. I don't really drink much pop, but aluminum cans, things of that nature. And so I started kind of digging into that and trying to figure out exactly why that wasn't the case, especially when I believe the number is it's about 40% of recyclable goods are consumed outside of the home. And like most people, the most optimal time to clean out your car is when you're sitting there pumping gas. And so it was a very, very obvious missing link to this overall equation, and something that I knew could make a very big difference. There was one pilot study that I saw where in a little less than a year, they were able to divert 120,000 plastic bottles from going into a landfill. And that's at one gas station. You both would know much better the numbers of how many gas stations we have in this country and how many opportunities there are for an increase in recycling or even a basic implementation of recycling. And so I started really digging into that, and I think we started to find kind of the obstacles and the reasons why this wasn't happening. But the more information that I gathered on this, the more I realized that this is a very achievable thing that we can do. It's not that complicated, and in many cases, the reason that it's not happening is just because the expertise is not there. And I'm talking to two people who are very much experts on this issue. And so I knew that if I just started reaching out to people and saying, hey, can we address this? Is there a way that we can maybe help make a very large difference in this over plastic pollution problem? Let's give it a shot. And that's kind of where we are right now.
You totally hit the nail on the head. I think the word achievable is the best way forward. Thanks for being a sustainability champion, and because it is achievable and, one store at a time, right? I think that we have 1 minute left, and I want to ask you the profound question, Colton, what's next? What's the next adventure? Where do you head off to next?
So the next adventure that I am planning right now is I'm going back to my home state of Minnesota and going up into the Boundary Waters, which is just an amazing watershed. It's pristine wilderness. It's actually America's heaviest, most visited wilderness in the country. And I'm going up there for a lot of reasons that actually kind of have something to do with sustainability. There's a mining proposition that's taking place right now near the outskirts of this watershed. And long story short, if this mine were to be implemented, the environmental risks would be quite devastating and catastrophic. And so I'm going up to the Boundary Waters for a little retreat, and then I will be going right from there to Washington, D.C. to talk to lawmakers about why, in fact, they should not push forward this mining proposition.
You should come by and say hi to us.
Yeah, we're based right out in Washington, so I look forward to hanging out with you. And Colton, I really appreciate your time today. You have another, where can people find you? I know you have a podcast, Those Park Guys.
We have a Those Park Guys podcast. We're in the process of kind of getting that back up and going in the midst of all of our travels. But you can find me on there, find me on Instagram, Colton D. Smith, and of course, you can see me every weekend on Rock the Park, which airs on ABC.
Well, thank you for all your work that you do with that. Working with us, I look forward to some great stories with our gas station recycling project. And thank you for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.